Good morning, ladies. Welcome to our Wednesday morning weekly Tanya Shir. We're studying Shaar Hayichud ve'Emunah. We're in the middle of Perek Hey. If you're using the English lessons in Tanya, we're on page 872, all the way at the bottom. If you're using a Hebrew Tanya, we're on Daf Pei, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in, where it says V'af hasogas Moshe Rabbeinu olav Hashem. So very briefly, here's what's going on. The Alter Rebbe is talking about the concept of Chesed and Gevura, Hashem HaGedula, the HaGevura, Gedula being Middos of Chesed, Gevura being Middos HaGevura, of course, representing the concept of Gilui, Chesed and Chesed and Gedula being connected with Gilui, with revelation, Gevura and being associated with the concept of Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum and Helam Behester. The Alter Rebbe also connected it to Middos Hadin and Middos Harachamim. Middos Hadin being again the concept of Gevura, Middos Harachamim being again the concept of Gilui. Now, why are we talking about this? So I'm just going to go through this very briefly. We're talking about this because at the beginning of Shaar Hayichud ve'Emunah, the Alter Rebbe revealed to us, taught us about the greatest Gilui or manifestation of godliness ever. How all of existence and everything that Hashem created is completely bottled b'metzias. It's nullified. It's completely one with Hashem. It exists like the way the light of the sun exists within the sun itself. Kol b'hamor, etc., etc. The first 3.5, 3 3/4 actually. Prakim of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe talked about the tremendous relationship between Hashem and the world. He finished Perek Gimel. Finish Perek Gimel with asking, well, if that's the case, why is this not revealed? Why don't we see it? Why is it not more apparent? If everything is one with Hashem, there's an expression in Chesed, Hashem is everything and everything is Hashem and Hashem is everything, right? So if everything is so godly, so why is this not revealed? Why is this not more manifest? Why is this such a seemingly far concept from us? In other words, why do we feel, why is there the sense that this idea of the unity between Hashem and existence, which the Alter Rebbe has explained to us, is at the deepest core of the very DNA of all of existence, everything that Hashem created? Why does this feel like the furthest thing from us? So why is it not more apparent? So in this, the Alter Rebbe is explaining because Hashem concealed it. And just as Hashem has a midah of Chesed, Hashem also has a midah of Gevura. And just as Hashem has the ability to reveal, and in this case, we're talking to create and to recreate every single second, so Hashem also has, at the same time, the ability to conceal himself. Hashem has the ability to conceal himself while he's revealing himself, while he's creating, to be completely behester ponim, I believe the Lashon was, where Hashem's face is completely hidden. Okay. So this is introduced to us, this idea, this concept that the Alter Rebbe will spend actually quite a bit of real estate in Shaar Hayichud ve'Emunah, is talking about this concept of Middos Hadin, Middos HaGevura, Tzimtzum, Helam Behester, the idea that Hashem hides himself. Now, what we learned last week is that the Alter Rebbe explains that Hashem, because Hashem has both of these midas, right, Chesed and Gevura, so whenever there's really a revelation of godliness, let's call it a true revelation of godliness, whenever Hashem reveals himself in a way which is true to himself, authentically, so there's always going to be Chesed and Gevura because Hashem has both, right? It would be like saying, if you want to get to know a person, if you want a relationship with them, if you want a relationship with them, you can't just connect with them in the good times and not connect with them in the difficult times, because a person consists of both. So you want a relationship. You want a relationship with me, and you don't want a relationship with me. If you want a relationship with me, you got to take the good, and what sometimes feels like not so good. So basically, this is what Alter Rebbe is saying here with regard to the Eibishter, that the Eibishter also has Chesed and Gevura, and they're deeply intertwined. In other words, it's not just to say that sometimes Hashem acts with Chesed and sometimes Hashem acts with Gevura. It's much more than that. It's that every true revelation of Hashem will come with Chesed and Gevura together. And so what do we gain from this? What do we have from this? So the idea that the world is both a place creation is both the platform in which Hashem reveals himself, expresses himself through creation, and at the same time conceals himself within the creation, and it's completely behester upon him, the idea that Hashem is doing, that the idea that both are manifest, so this means it's authentic godliness. In other words, if Hashem would have made a world in such a way where it's only revealed godliness, right, and no tzimtzum, so we on the receiving end, we think, well, that would be wonderful, right? That sounds like Gan Eden. Maybe that even was Gan Eden, right? Where there was just Gilui, no concealment, no tzimtzum. But for whatever reason, the Eibishter chose to make the world with Chesed and Gevura, with Gilui and tzimtzum, with Hester upon him as well. So a person would tempted to think, okay, Hashem did it for some type of reason. Hashem wanted to inspire us in order to litain pischa pela bali tshuva, for a person to be able to climb higher, etc., like we spoke until now. But really, the Alter Rebbe is saying here, no, it's much more than the point is much stronger than that, because any revelation of godliness, which authentic godliness, by definition, is going to be both Chesed and Gevura. And if it's one without the other, then it can't be authentic godliness, because godliness consists of both. And yes, of course, this is beyond human understanding, right? Of why it has to consist with both, or even better, how the two can, these two complete polar opposites, Chesed and Gevura, Shem Havaya, Shem Elokim, Middos Adin, Middos Rachamim, Gedula, Gevura, etc., how they can coexist, how they can be so tightly intertwined. This is, of course, is beyond our understanding, but this is because we're tapping into here a level of godliness that is taka beyond human understanding. And therefore, this is the way it expresses itself. Okay. Let's move on. I'm up to the word va'af. Va'af hasogas Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom b'nevuasai. This, the Alter Rebbe is going to make the case that this idea, the fusion of Chesed and Gevura, the bringing together of the two, is a symptom, is an expression of authentic godliness, of real Gilui Elokus, to such an extent that it's beyond human understanding, so much beyond human understanding that even Moshe Rabbeinu olav hashalom b'nevuasai, even Moshe Rabbeinu, through his nevuah, his hasaga, what he was able to grasp, lo hoyse b'olam atzilus, he couldn't, whatever this means, that Moshe Rabbeinu in olam atzilus, Moshe Rabbeinu through his nevuah was not able to truly comprehend what olam atzilus. Olam atzilus is the world we're talking about, to which Chesed and Gevura are completely come together. It had to, Moshe Rabbeinu could only understand it as it came down into Olam Habriya. And even in Olam Habriya, Chesed Gevura, so again, I don't want to get lost in the Kabbalah here, but the idea is that this fusion of Chesed and Gevura is such an expression of Elokus in a way which is beyond human understanding, that even Moshe Rabbeinu b'nevuasai, in his nevuah, was not able to understand, was not able to comprehend this fusion of Chesed and Gevura. Definitely not the way it is in Olam Atzilus, for sure not. And even the way it comes down in Olam Habriya, he wasn't able to see Chesed and Gevura together. At the country, that's a Hayichud again. I don't want to get into that now. I was watching very briefly, I was watching a video clip by Rabbi Twersky, Zohar Malichtik Gan Eden, a psychiatrist, a doctor. So he told a very cute story. He said he was talking about tragedy and about pain and suffering in this world. So he told a very cute story. Not Chas Hashem that he was making light of it, but he brought out a point in a very beautiful way. He said there was a Hasidic Rebbe, whose name, of course, I forgot, and he had tremendous Arichas Yomim. He lived till deep into his 90s, 150 years ago, which was virtually unheard of. So his Hasidim said to him, Rebbe, how did you live so long? What's the secret to your longevity? What is it? So this particular Rebbe said, I'll tell you. He said, when human beings go through pain in life, when human beings go through anguish, human nature, Hashem made us this way, is that we ask Hashem, we turn to the Rebbeinu Shalom and say, why? Eibishter, why? Why'd you do this? So the Eibishter is the Chachaston. The Eibishter is the source of everything good and kind. The Eibishter wants to explain it to us. He wants to reveal to us the reason. Everything the Eibishter does has a reason. There's a master plan for everything. So the Eibishter wants to expose us to what the reason is. He says, what's the problem? The problem is that as long as we are alive in physical bodies in this world, we cannot understand this. Where do you learn this from? You learn this from something that it says in Parshas Kisisa last week, where Moshe Rabbeinu says to the Eibishter, "Hareini nos k'vaydecha, show me your honor. Come on, reveal yourself to me. I want to know the truth." And Hashem says to him, I'd love to, but lo yirani odom v'chai, you can't remain alive while I do that. So Hashem says to people, you want to understand my ways? Gesundheit, come up here, Lamaila, come up to Gan Eden, and here I'll show you everything. So this particular Chesed Rebbe said, I suffered in my life like every other human being, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. He said, but I never asked the Eibishter why. I was never in a particular rush to find out what's the reason. I knew a person cannot understand, so it didn't bother me so much to understand the reason. Pain is pain, but the reason, he says, I never pursued the reason. So he said, the Eibishter takes a look and says, this guy's not in a rush to find out what the reason is. Hashem says, I'm not in a rush to show him what the reason is. Let him live longer than days. He told a story. I'm digressing a little bit. He told a story that I've been repeating it since I heard it. It's poshut, it's mamash, it's a mind-boggling story. He said, I actually heard the story many years ago. It was very refreshing to hear it again. Rabbi Dr. Twersky, he himself is a descendant of Chassidus Rebbes. So he has a lot of the tradition of Chassidus and Chassidus Rebbes and their stories. He has a lot in his family. He's actually a great grandson, a direct descendant of the Alter Rebbe, of the whose Tanya we're learning. So he said that after the Mezritcher Maggid passed away, so Mezritcher Maggid had, as much as he was famous for who he was himself, he was as famous for his Talmidim called the Chavraya Kadisha. All the greatest Chassidish Rebbes, the Alter Rebbe, of course, Rebbe Lamelech, Reb Zusha, all the greats, they were all the Mezritcher Maggid students. Chavraya Kadisha, the Holy Society, they were called. So the Maisa, the story goes that after the Mezritcher Maggid passed, so his new decrees against Jews were being issued by the government. And his Talmidim immediately observed that as long as the Maggid was alive, these decrees were not, these anti-Semitic persecutive nature decreed were not coming out against the Jews. So they really, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. So they realized that the Maggid, with his tzidkas, because he was the Maggid, he was protecting the world, he was protecting the Jewish community from these decrees. And now that he passed, so somehow the protection was not the same, and the decrees came back. So the Chavrai Kaddish, the students ran to the cave, they ran to the oil, they ran to the resting place of the Mezritcher Maggid, and they started to daven that the Mezritcher Maggid should continue to protect them. And the Zohar even says that the tzaddik could protect more after his passing than while he's alive. Anyways, they davened all day, whatever it was, that the Maggid should continue protecting them. That night, one of them had a dream. And the Maggid said that he's no longer going to be able to provide the same, this is the story. The Maggid said he's no longer going to be able to provide the same protection from Gan Eden that he was able to provide while he was in the physical world. Why? A tzaddik is more powerful after 120. So why not? So Mezritcher Maggid said like this, because now that I'm in heaven and I see cooked men with under Egen, we see things from a different perspective. So now I'm looking at the world and all of these decrees, so to speak, from Hashem's perspective, from above. From above, I can see the purpose of it. When the Maggid said, when I was an neshama beguf in this physical world and I didn't have that perspective, so I was able to daven and invest myself with everything I have, that these decrees should not exist, and I was successful. But now that I'm in Shemayim and I'm looking at it from the Eibishter's perspective, or from a different perspective, I see the value of it. Once I see the value of it, I can no longer daven the same way to cancel the decrees, and therefore I'm not going to be as effective. But the Maggid said to the students, now it's your turn. Now you guys, as neshamas begufim, now you guys have to be able to daven and do this. That's the story. The story is unbelievable on so many levels. But first and foremost, what you see here is the idea that Alter Rebbe was talking about over here, that he says the lo yirani odom b'chai, a person while he's physically alive cannot see this. The way the Eibishter works with Chesed and Gevura together, kindness and severity, the way all of this goes together, not possible for a human being, definitely not as we live in this physical world. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, Hasogas Moshe Rabbeinu ben Vuasai, couldn't reach this concept of Chesed and Gevura together. All right. Only Rak, the Alter Rebbe goes on to say, Rak Shematan Schor and Shal Tzadikim began Eden, when the Tzadikim get to Gan Eden, who Hasogas Hispashtus Achayas, V'oir HaNimshach Mishtei Midosei L'Chesed, there it is beferish. There it is explicitly. Alter Rebbe says only exactly what we're saying here. Only a neshama as it exists in Gan Eden can understand, can there see this fusion of Chesed and Gevura together. Ooh, this idea of Chesed and Gevura together, of Hashem's, of authentic, of infinite godliness, expressing itself in the fusion of two opposites, like we learned before. Doesn't just mean that anybody who walks up into Gan Eden can get this revelation. Those neshamas of tzaddikim who learn Torah in this world, and they learn Torah l'shma, they learn Torah not for any ulterior motives. They learn Torah in this world not for any ulterior motives, but just for the sake of the Torah itself. It's called l'shma. So when these neshamas get to Gan Eden, there in Gan Eden, they can see this concept of Chesed and Gevura together. Because from these two Middos of Chesed and Gevura, nimtach rakia ala neshamas shebegan Eden. Let's get a good translation for that. Nimtach rakia al neshamas shebegan Eden. Translation: a firmament, meaning a makif, a transcendental, encompassing degree of illumination is spread over the neshamas of Gan Eden, right? Because this idea of bringing Chesed and Gevura together, this creates like an or makif, a much higher light, that the only way to get there is the neshamas as they are in Gan Eden, if they've studied Torah Lishma in this world. Rakia zeh, and this rakia, this or makif, this, let's call it understanding or comprehension that even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have. This bringing together of Chesed and Gevura, Nikra Rosa Dairaisa. Wow. This idea is called Rosa Dairaisa, the secrets of Torah. Uboy Soid Chaf Beis Oisias HaTorah Hanasuna Mishtei Midas Elu Kedichsiv Miminoi Eish Das Lamoi. This concept, Rosa Dairaisa, the secrets of Torah, this Oir Makif. This Oir Makif, right? That comes from the Chesed and Gevura, this Oir Makif that comes from the Chesed and Gevura together. This is the source. This is from here comes the concept of Chav Beis Oisias HaTorah, the 22 letters of Torah. We'll try to explain this in a second. And Asuna Mishtei Midas Elu, these 22 letters of the Torah contain these two Midas Chesed. Where do we see this? Chesed and Gevura. Miminoi Eish Das Lome. From Hashem's right side, he gave a fiery law. It's a pasuk. Miminoi is Chesed, Eish is Gevura. From this Oir Makif, a tal, a dew drips down. Mazan HaNeshamas, for these, to sustain the Neshamas. Tanya Yudias Soid Chav Beis Oisias HaTorah. Period. So the only way a person can ever truly understand this is you have to learn Torah Lishma in this world. And once you've learned Torah Lishma, Torah Lishma means Torah not for any other purpose other than learning Torah itself. And then when you get to Gan Eden, then you can understand the depths, the Rosa Deiraisa, the secrets of Torah that were contained in the Torah that you learned in this world, Lishma. And then over there, that's where you can finally understand this concept of Chesed and Gevura as they fuse together. Okay, let's just finish it, then I'll explain. Mitzvahs and levushim. Mitzvahs is not enough for this. Mitzvahs are garments for the soul. Gevura calls there. You can look up in the sources of Kabbalah to understand this. Mitzvahs is not enough, because mitzvahs is not about understanding at the end of the day. Mitzvahs is about fulfilling Hashem's will. To really be able to understand this concept of Chesed and Gevura together, the ability of Hashem, the godly revelation in this fusion of opposites, this comes only, and Neshama has to learn Torah Lishma in this world. You have to be a tzaddik, you have to learn Torah Lishma in this world, and then when you get to Gan Eden, over there you can understand it. Okay. I want to explain mamish one idea, and then for today maybe we'll stop over here, and then we'll continue next week in Mirz Hashem with Perek Vav. I want to explain mamish one idea. This idea that Alter Rebbe is saying, that the Chesed and Gevura, as they come together, create this Oir Makif, create this transcendental light, and this is the root of the Chav Beis, the 22 letters that we have, which Hashem gave the Torah, and Hashem gave us the Torah. He gave it to us in words. The Torah is the deepest secrets of godliness. But there's oisius, there's word that Hashem gave it with. So the root, the source of these chabeis oisius Torah is in this oir makif, this rikia, this transcendental light of Chesed and Gevura together. Okay, so explain mamash, just one idea, akoponim, very, very briefly. In Chassidus, you have a lot of discussion about a mashal that's often used in describing the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people, that Hashem in existence. A mashal that's often used is Rav and Talmud, a teacher and a student. The teacher teaches, the teacher is the giver, the student is the receiver, etc. This mashal is used a lot, even though obviously the mashal is limited because the mashal is basically a mashal for the concept of seichel, just in the world of intellect. But because intellect is the highest and one of the highest abilities that a human being has, so it's used as a mashal. Hashem is a Rav, and the Jews, creation is a Talmud. But here Chassidus says, let me very carefully, here Chassidus says that this Rav and Talmud, in order for it to be a mashal, in order for it to be an appropriate mashal to understand Hashem and creation, we have to picture to ourselves a Rav and a Talmud that are, quote, be'ein aroich. Be'ein aroich means the distance between them is immeasurable. Basically, in human beings, there's pretty much no such thing. Because even if the teacher is Lomerzogen Einstein himself, yeah, the greatest thinker, if he was, and the greatest, abstract concepts, and the student is, let's say, a very simple, very, ignorant person, but you wouldn't say that the distance between them is infinite, right? Bottom line, if the simple person can understand that 1 + 1 = 2, or 2 + 2 = 4, then slowly but surely they can develop. Maybe it'll take a long time, but through process they can build, right? When I was a kid, there was a very popular math program. It's probably still around today. I forgot what it was called exactly. Kumon, something like that. It's a system to help kids learn mathematics. And the idea was that if you could get a kid to draw a line, the kids struggle with mathematics. If you get a kid to draw a line from one dot to the next, if that's all the kid can do, just from here to there, draw a line, if that's all you can do, that we can work with that. This Kumo system said we can work with that. We can get the kid to build them up to the highest of heights in mathematics. It's just a process, just a question of time, right? Maybe all you have is a toothpick, but if you're ready to scratch away and you're ready to be consistent with time, you can wear away the whole mountain. As long as the toothpick doesn't wear down, the toothpick won't. So this means that in our world, a Rav and a Talmud, there's always some common denominator between the two of them. You can always draw some line, so to speak, a commonality between the two. And if you can draw some commonality, then it's not, in the end, it's not really an apt mashal for Rav and Talmud. What is an apt mashal for Rav and Talmud? At Rav and Talmud be'ein aroich, right? So in yeshiva, they gave us the example, if a kid thinks that 1 + 1 = 3, and it's Albert Einstein, then it's be'ein aroich, right? That's maybe not such a practical mashal. But where you have maybe a better mashal for this is where you have sometimes, let's say, a person who is stuck in a particular mindset, right? They have a particular attitude. They have a particular way of seeing the world, right? And they go to a psychologist, they go to a healer, and the psychologist explained to them that basically the way they see the world is unhealthy. And this unhealthy way of seeing it prevails upon every part of their perspective is tainted by this mistake that they have, the way they see themselves, the way they see the world around them, right? The person, Loyalenu, who's paranoid, right? Loyalenu. Person paranoid thinks the whole world is against them. The whole world doesn't care about you, in truth. But the person is convinced that the whole world is maybe a better mashal for Rav and Talmud be'ein aroich. Either way, I'm out to make a point. The point is that the Rav and Talmud, when you say Rav and Talmud be'ein aroich, because you use it as a mashal for the Eibashter in creation, we're talking about a Rav and Talmud where there's no common denominator between the two of them. There's nothing that's true in the world of the Rav that's also true in the world of the Talmud. Can't draw a line. There's nothing that's true in the Talmud that's also true in the world of the Rav. That's why it's a mashal for Hashem and creation. Let's say we find such a thing, right? We find a person comes into a psychologist, and they're stuck in a certain perspective, right? Rabbi Shaar has an excellent story for this. She told you very begitter. Rabbi Shaar says, a woman comes in to see a psychologist, and she tells the psychologist, look, I don't really need to be here. I'm perfectly fine, but I'm just here because my friends insisted that I come. All right, the psychologist says, so why do your friends feel that you have to come? Because I keep telling them that I'm dead. The woman says, because I keep telling keep telling my friends that I'm dead, and my friends think I'm crazy. They don't believe me. But the truth is that I am dead. Oh, I see, says the psychologist. So you really believe you're dead? No, the woman says, I don't believe I'm dead. I am dead. It's a pity my friends don't recognize it, but it's okay. They're the ones who should be in here seeing you, the psychologist, not me. The psychologist said, oh boy, we got a live one here. I mean, we got a full-on crazy here. The psychologist says to the woman, so how long you been dead? Oh, decades. The psychologist thinks, well, what are we going to do with this person? So the psychologist goes, tell me. Psychologist has an idea. He says, tell me, if you've been dead for so long, people who've been dead for decades, do they bleed? And the woman goes, of course not. They've been dead for years, decades. So quickly, the psychologist pulls out a tiny little pin from his pocket, and he gives a little scratch on the woman, pokes her in her arm, and a drop of blood comes out. And the psychologist is trying to create some kind of cognitive dissonance where the woman will realize that there's something wrong with her theory because she just said then people who've been dead for decades don't bleed, and boom, there it is, a drop of blood in her arm. So he looks at the woman to see her reaction, and the woman looks at her arm, the tiny little red dot that's emerging there, and she looks at the psychologist. She goes, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Would you know it? Dead people actually do bleed. Close quote. So the idea is that the Talmud is stuck in his world, and he can't, nothing that the Rav is going to say is going to change the Talmud's world because the Talmud is stuck. Okay, fine. We call it, again, in the language of Chesed, we call this Rav and Talmud, who are Be'en Arech, means the distance, the gap between them is infinite. Now we tell the Rav, go in and teach the class. Go in and be mashpia to this Talmud, and not the pshat pretend that 1 + 1 = 3, right? Not the pshat tell the woman she's right that she's dead, and then have a conversation with her as a dead person. No, slowly with time, right? Like Reb Nachman's mashal, get on the table, pretend that you're a chicken, and slowly with time communicate to this person and elevate them up to your world. So Chesed says, how do you do this? If there's no, it's a contradiction in terms. If there's no way, if there's no common denominator, if there's no commonality, if there's nothing which is true, if there's no starting point, it's called basis mishutefes, means there's no common denominator. If there's no point which is true both in the world of the Rav and the world of the Talmud, so we have nothing that we agree upon. So how are we going to talk? How are we going to engage in this process if there's nothing to begin with? So Chassidus said, I'm going to give you the land. This is what's written in Chassidus. I'm going to give you the words, and this is the words. Chassidus says that the Rav gives the Talmud oisiyos, and the oisiyos contain. Oisiyos means words, letters, words. The oisiyos, the words, contain the seichel harav. True, the Seichel Harav is completely hidden within these oisiyos. And the Talmud will understand the oisiyos the way the Talmud understands them. But since the entire Seichel Harav is hidden in these oisiyos, since the entire understanding of the Rav is hidden, not begolei, in these oisiyos, therefore, as the Talmud hears them and learns them, with time it will take 40 years, at least. But with time, through studying these oisiyos, the Talmud will be able to graduate from his world of understanding and move into the Rav's world of understanding. In short, the answer Chassidus gives is, we tell the Rav, you go in and teach it on the most basic level that you can. Teach the Gemara, teach the mathematical idea. You teach the patient what it's like healthy living. Teach it to them, just the oisius, tell them the words, tell them Bereshis Bar Lakim, tell them Amoisi Mechaber El Varaya, tell them in Shaar, the words of Shaar Hayichud Ve'amunah, Chesed and Gevura are they're klulim zebazeh, they're contained within each other, etc. Give them the words. The words will be the bridge. The words will create a bridge. Now, we haven't yet said how. But this is what Chesed says. The words will create the bridge. The words will carry the idea from the world of the Rav into the world of the Talmud by taking the wisdom of the Rav and hiding it in the words so that it doesn't confuse the Talmud. Bringing it into the world of the Talmud in a way that the Talmud can understand, which is completely erroneous. And then slowly, somehow, as the Talmud walks over this bridge, he slowly walks until he gets to the Seichel Rav, and 40 years later, he understands it the way the Rav does. Now, the process to explain how the Talmud goes through that transformation is one difficulty to understand. But the bigger question is, what are these oisius? What's this magical ingredient here called oisius, letters, words, that contain this ability? And the answer is exactly what the Alter Rebbe says here. Exactly. Oisios, words really come from, the source of words come from Chobei's Oisios Torah, the 22 letters that the Torah was written in. They were used for the Torah. What's the source of this? The source of this is in the fusion, in the coming together of opposites of Chesed and Gevura Datzilis. This creates a Rokia, this creates an Ur Makif. The Oisios are rooted in this Ur Makif. And therefore, the Oisios have the power to be able to bridge the world of the Rav and the world of the Talmud. The way the Rebbe would always say this, the way the Rebbe would always word this, the Rebbe would say, in order to bring together two opposites, you need a third thing which is higher than both of them, a force which is higher than them both, which can seamlessly bring these two ideas together. So Oisios, words, content, when a person expresses it, when the Eibishter expresses it, they're rooted not in the idea. They're rooted in a place which is much higher than the idea. And this way, the words have the power to bring the content even to a Talmud who is infinitely lower. Just to add a little bit of explanation, we have an erroneous understanding of this. We think that when a person has an idea, right, and then they have words to express the idea. So we think that the words which are used are lower than the idea. First, you have an idea, then you find good words within which to express the idea, and then the words are vehicles. They're like cars to carry these ideas to others, to write it down, to express it, to reveal it, whatever the case may be. Chesed says it's not true. Actually, the oisios, the words, come before the idea. Again, we think you have an idea, and then you look for words within which to put the idea. So this says it's the opposite. The oisius, this concept of oisius. Now, what is oisius? This also needs to be understood. But this concept of oisius, actually, they predate, they're higher than the idea. The idea actually comes from these oisius. Oisius in a person, it's nefesh, and Lamaila and Elokus, it's Gilui Elokus. It's a revelation. It's godliness. So therefore, any idea that'll come later will always be actually a revelation of the oisios. We think, again, I'm saying it again, we think oisios are revelations of the idea. Really, the ideas are expression of the oisios. That's why, and that's why the oisios have the power to take these ideas from a Rav to a Talmud, because they're actually even higher than the way the Rav understands it themselves. And this is the reason Chesed says why, when you explain something and you put it into words, as you put it into words, as a person puts it into words, they discover deeper depths within the idea that they're putting into words, which is difficult to understand. If the idea is here and the words are down here, and we're just looking for ways to put the ideas into words, then as we put the ideas into words, we're lowering the idea, not elevating it. But we find that as people do express things in words, they discover new depths in the idea, or altogether new depths that they never thought of. This shows us that the oisius are rooted higher, deeper in the nefesh adam, deeper in the elokus. In the words of the Alter Rebbe here, that the oisius come from the rakia, from the oir makif, which comes from chesed and gevura d'atzilus as they're fused as one. That's where the oisius come. So when a person learns Torah lishma in this world, when a tzaddik, learns Torah lishma in this world, after 120, when they go up to Gan Eden, over there they're able to discover Roz V'Deiraisa, the secret, the source of the Torah. Where does all this come from? It comes from this level in godliness, where the oisius come from, of Chesed and Gevura together. And over there, only over there, when a person is when the neshama has completely divested itself of all limitations of this world, can the neshama finally understand this concept of how by Hashem, Chesed and Gevura, only as they are completely one can they truly express authentic godliness as it is higher than creation. And the fact that the Hashem expressed this in creating the world, by creating both a world which is both absolute godliness, pure liquid gold godliness, and at the same time, that godliness is completely hidden. This is an expression that not that we understand, can't understand it here, but this is an expression that we can see and feel of Chesed and Gevura together, of this level of elokus, which goes beyond any ability of human comprehension. Okay.